The wind howled through the narrow streets of the small mountain village, wrapping around the stone cottages like a restless spirit searching for warmth. Snow fell softly from the sky, blanketing the roofs and quieting the world beneath its white silence. Inside one of those cottages, a fire crackled in a hearth, throwing flickering shadows on the walls as an old woman named Lila sat in her worn rocking chair, knitting a scarf of deep maroon wool. Her fingers moved slowly, tenderly, as if weaving memories into every stitch. Lila had lived alone for years. Her husband had passed away long ago, and her children had moved to the city, too busy chasing life's demands to visit often. Still, she never complained. She had her little garden, her books, and her knitting. But most of all, she had her window, the one that faced the old stone bridge stretching across the frozen river. From there, she often watched travelers passing through the village. She liked to imagine their stories, who they were, where they were going, and what dreams they carried in their hearts. One stormy afternoon, just as the light began to fade, Lila noticed movement beyond the bridge. A figure struggled through the wind, small, bent against the cold, dragging a bundle of something wrapped in cloth. Lila pressed her palm to the frosted glass. It was a boy, no older than 10 or 11, his coat thin and torn, his breath coming out in white clouds. He stumbled once, twice, and then fell to his knees in the snow. Without thinking, Lila rose from her chair, pulled her shawl tight, and opened her door to the blizzard. The wind bit her cheeks, and snow stung her eyes, but she pressed on. "Boy," she shouted over the storm. "Come here." The boy didn't move. She hurried forward, boots sinking into the snow, until she reached him. His lips were blue, his fingers trembling. He tried to speak but couldn't. She wrapped her arms around him and helped him up. "You'll freeze out here," she murmured. "Come with me." By the time she got him inside, his body was shivering uncontrollably. Lila guided him to the hearth and began rubbing his hands between hers. The firelight revealed his face, pale, frightened, but delicate, with wide brown eyes that looked both young and old at once. His clothes were worn thin, his shoes soaked through. "What's your name, child?" she asked gently. "Aaron," he whispered, voice hoarse. I was trying to get to the next town." "In this weather," she said, shaking her head. "You'd never make it. Sit here. I'll make you something warm." She brewed him tea and poured it into her favorite chipped mug. Then she ladled out some soup from the pot that always simmered on the stove. Aaron took it with trembling hands and ate slowly, as though afraid it might disappear. When he finished, he looked around her small cottage, the shelves of books, the quilts stacked neatly in corners, the photographs on the mantel. "You live here alone?" he asked softly. "I do," Lila said. "But I have good company." She smiled, nodding toward the fire. "And now, it seems, I have you too." Aaron hesitated, then smiled back, faint but real. "Thank you," he said. "For helping me." That night, he slept on the small couch near the fire, wrapped in blankets. Lila sat watching him for a long time, the snowstorm roaring outside. Something about him stirred memories she hadn't felt in years, the tenderness of caring for another, the quiet joy of having someone close. Before going to bed, she whispered a silent prayer for the boy's safety, not realizing that fate had just bound two lonely hearts together. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world sparkling in sunlight. Aaron woke to the smell of freshly baked bread. "Morning, dear," Lila said, placing a plate before him. "You'll stay until the road's clear. The mountains can be cruel to travelers." Aaron nodded, grateful. Over the next few days, warmth returned to his cheeks, and laughter began to echo in the cottage once more. He helped Lila fetch water, chopped firewood, and even fed the small birds that gathered outside her window. She taught him how to knit, his clumsy fingers fumbling with the yarn until they found a rhythm. As they sat together by the fire each evening, Aaron told her bits and pieces about his life. He had no parents, he said. He had been living in an orphanage in the valley, but it was closed after the last flood. He had tried to find work in nearby villages, but most doors stayed shut to a boy with no family name. He had been walking for days when the snowstorm caught him. Lila listened quietly, heart aching. She knew too well the ache of loneliness, the hollow silence that came when no one called your name. "You're safe now," she told him. "You can stay as long as you need." Aaron looked at her, unsure if he believed her words. People didn't usually mean it when they said such things. But something about Lila, the softness in her eyes, the steady kindness in her voice, told him this time might be different. Winter stretched on, but inside the cottage, warmth bloomed like spring. Aaron brought laughter into Lila's days, and Lila brought comfort into his nights. They shared stories, dreams, and small joys, the way the fire danced, the way the snow caught light at dusk. Slowly, the emptiness that had once filled the space between them began to melt away. One evening, while mending an old scarf, Lila looked up and said, "You know, Aaron, sometimes life brings two worlds together for a reason. Yours and mine, they're not so different. We both lost something, but perhaps we found what we were meant to in each other." Aaron tilted his head. "You mean family?" Lila smiled softly. "Yes, dear. Family isn't always the people we're born to. Sometimes it's the hearts that choose to stay." From that night on, Aaron began calling her Grandma Lila. The first time he said it, she froze for a moment, then tears welled in her eyes. "It's been a long time since anyone called me that," she whispered, her voice trembling. Spring came slowly to the mountains. The snow melted, revealing green shoots pushing through the earth. One morning, Lila found Aaron outside, standing by the river. The water shimmered under the sunlight, its icy edges breaking free. "It's beautiful," he said. "It is," Lila replied. "And so are you, child. You've brought life back to this home." Aaron turned to her, eyes bright. "You gave me a home," he said simply. "Before this, I didn't belong anywhere." That night, Lila sat at her writing desk, pen trembling in her hand. She wrote a letter to her children in the city. It had been months since she'd heard from them. She told them about Aaron, about how he had come to her door during a storm and filled her life with color again. "I don't know if you'll understand," she wrote, "but love has a way of finding its place between strangers. It bridges worlds we thought would never touch." Weeks passed, and the rhythm of their lives settled into something peaceful. Lila taught Aaron to read old poetry, and he taught her how to fix the little things around the house. They laughed, argued playfully, and shared long walks through the meadows. The villagers began to notice. The lonely widow who once kept to herself now smiled again, her eyes bright as if spring had settled inside her heart. But time, as always, brings both gifts and trials. That summer, Lila's health began to wane. Her steps grew slower, her hands weaker. She brushed it off at first, unwilling to worry Aaron, but he noticed. One evening, as she tried to lift a pot from the stove, she stumbled. Aaron caught her just in time. "You shouldn't be doing that," he said, panic in his voice. "I'm just tired," she murmured, smiling faintly. "It's nothing, dear." But it was more than nothing. Soon, she was spending most of her time in bed, her knitting needles resting quietly on the table beside her. Aaron sat by her side, reading aloud or holding her hand. The firelight flickered gently, like the pulse of their shared world. One quiet evening, she reached out and touched his face. "You've brought more warmth into my life than I thought possible," she said softly. "Promise me something, Aaron. When I'm gone, you won't let this kindness stop with me. You'll keep passing it on." Tears welled in his eyes. "Don't say that. You're not going anywhere." She smiled, the kind of smile that holds both love and farewell. "Even when I'm gone, I'll still be here," she whispered. "In the stories you tell, in the warmth you share. That winter, when the snow returned to the mountains, Lila's cottage stood quieter than before. Aaron was older now, his shoulders straighter, his eyes deeper. But inside, the fire still burned, and on the mantel sat a framed photograph, Lila smiling beside him, a scarf of deep maroon draped around both their shoulders. He had stayed, tending to the little house that had once saved him. Travelers still passed through the village, and when they did, they often found warmth and shelter at Lila's old cottage. Aaron welcomed them all, wanderers, lost souls, those seeking a bit of kindness in a cold world. He offered them soup, tea, and stories. And each time he did, he remembered Lila's words, "Family is the hearts that choose to stay." Over the years, people began calling the cottage the house between worlds. They said something about it felt different, as though two unseen spirits lived there, one who once needed saving and one who had given all her love to save him. And on quiet nights, when snowflakes drifted past the window, Aaron would sit by the fire, feeling the warmth touch his face. In that glow, he could almost hear her soft voice, gentle, eternal, whispering across the distance between worlds. "Love never ends, my child. It only finds new homes to live in." And in that warmth, between two worlds, one of memory and one of life, kindness kept burning, bright and unending, like a hearth that never forgot how to glow.